In fact, God has chosen so many things in your life. He's chosen everything in your life. He's chosen who your family is. He's chosen where you live. He's chosen how you look. God has done so many things that He's done because He is in control. Now, do you know what we forget? We forget that God is in control. So, Trina, can you go to the next picture here? All right, so last time we were talking about Isaac. We talked about how Abraham and Isaac, how they acted out the gospel. Remember, we talked about how that Abraham offered his son Isaac as he was willing to offer him as a sacrifice, but then God sent a ram. And so after that, Abraham found a wife for Isaac, and his wife's name was Rebekah. And at first, they didn't have any children. And so Isaac, because he had learned from his father to call on God, he asked God. He called out to God and he said, God, would you help my wife to have a child? And God answered his prayer, and He even gave him more than what he asked for, because God said, I'm going to give her twins. Now, when she had these two babies in her belly, they started to fight with each other. In fact, it was so bad because moms, when they have a baby, the baby will move around. But it was so bad that she actually prayed. She asked God, she said, God, she said, why? It feels like these two babies are fighting. And God said to her, He said, Rebekah, He says, in your belly are not just two babies. He said, but these two boys are going to be leaders of two different countries. And that's why they're fighting with each other. And God said this because God knew everything that was going to happen. And God even said, He said the older one, and he's actually was the older and the stronger one, He said is actually going to be the servant, or is going to be the lesser country to the younger one. Now that was different because in the Bible, the firstborn had a special job. They got special privilege. They got to be the spiritual leader of the family. Just like Abraham, God said, I'm the God of Abraham, of Isaac. And then these two boys, his name was Esau, and his name was Jacob. And so everybody thought it was going to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. But God said, no, He says, I'm choosing Abraham, Isaac, and He says, I've chosen Jacob. Because God is in control. And God, before they were born, He said, I'm going to choose Jacob. And so when they were born, the parents, they had these twins, and so they each picked their own favorite. So which one do you think Isaac was his favorite? Do you think he's holding Esau? So which one do you think was his favorite? Yes, sir. Esau was his favorite. And Rebekah, God had told her that the younger one, Jacob, was going to be the one that God was going to choose and use more. And so, guess which one Rebekah was her favorite one?
Jacob.
Which one? Jacob. And so they each had their ones that they liked. So Trina, go to the next one. Next slide. So as they got older, they were very, very different. Esau was a man that liked to go out hunting. And so he was like an outdoors person. He would have been at Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop. He liked all that stuff. Now Jacob, they took care of sheep and different things. So Jacob, he more was doing stuff that would be around where the family lived. While Esau was going out hunting. He was a hunter. And they looked different. They both had beards, but Esau, when he was born, he had lots and lots of hair, like we saw his hair. And he had bright red hair, the Bible talked about, that he was really bright red hair. And so these two boys were really different. Now I wonder sometimes if Jacob wished he could change and be more like, what is our one?
Jesus can change you?
Or change me. Oh, I said it again. What is it?
Jesus can change me.
Trina, do you have our Scooby Snacks? Where are those Scooby Snacks at, Jess?
Can you get them?
Oh, here. Can you go back and get them, Trina? Can you go back and get them? And can you give each of those boys, give each of them 3 Scooby Snacks? Those two guys right there. Now, as they got older, they were different. Now, Jacob, he was kind of known as a trickster. That's what his name is. His name means, Jacob means a supplanter. It means someone that like comes at the end, like you think you're going to win and then somebody else beats you at the end. That's kind of what Jacob's name meant. Meant he was, his name could also mean like trickster. And so one day Esau was coming in from hunting. And he was really, really hungry. He was starving. He's like, I can't go any further. I've got to have something to eat. And so Jacob was there and he was making some chili. And Esau said, give me some of your chili that you made. And he says, I want some. He's like, I'm about to die. He's like, I think I'm going to, like some of you come today and you need snacks when you come to Good News Club because you say, if I don't get a snack, if I don't eat something, I'm going to die. He wasn't going to die, but he was really hungry. And so Jacob said, why don't you give me your birthright? Now, your birthright meant that you were the spiritual leader of the family. Now, Esau, he didn't really care about being the spiritual leader. He didn't care because, remember, God promised Abraham that someday somebody from his family was going to come and bless the whole world, and that was going to be Jesus. But Esau didn't really care about that. And he said, what good is it if I have this birthright if I die, because then I'll be dead and I won't be able to use it anyways. So then Jacob said, give me your birthright, promise me that you'll let me be the spiritual leader, and then I'll give you this chili. And so Jacob tricked his brother. Now, who did God choose? Who was God going to choose? Yes, sir? Yes.
Esau?
No, God said he was going to choose Jacob. So did Jacob need to trick his brother to get God to do what God was going to do already? No, but he was trying to do it his own way. He was trying to, because he thought, I've got to change things on my own because I can't trust God. What is it? That's right. Can you give her 3 Scooby Snacks, Trina? 3 Scooby Snacks, right there. All right. And so, Jacob tricked his brother. But, now, go to the next one here. Now, the next thing happened was this. His father, Isaac, was getting old. Now, we saw Isaac when he was a baby. When he was born, his mom was laughing, and they had this son. And then we saw him last time that we had our story. We said that Isaac was maybe a teenager when Abraham was going to offer him, but then God saved Isaac. Well, now Isaac is an old man. Isaac is getting old, and he can't see very good. Now, I have glasses. If I take off my glasses, I can't see very good. But Isaac's eyes were worse than my eyes. He could barely see anything. And so he called his son Esau. He said, Esau. He's like, I'm getting old. He's like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. And he says, I want you to go, and I want you to go hunting. And he says, you know those deer, that venison you get? It's like, I love that meat that you make, and you kill an animal when you're hunting, and then you bring it home and you make it for me. And so he said, go and make some of that meat that I like and bring it to me. And he says, after I eat it, because he must have been really hungry. He must have been like Esau. He said, after you bring this to me, Esau, then I'm going to bless you, and I'll give you a blessing. Now remember, the birthright was you become the spiritual leader. The blessing meant that you would get twice as much as the other person. So like when your parents died, like we have wills where people leave stuff to their family. Well, in the Bible, when somebody would die, they would leave twice as much to the oldest child. So that means that if, say that somebody had $1 million, that means that they would, or say they had $3 million, they'd give $2 million to the oldest one, and to the next one they'd only give $1 million. And so that seems like a lot, but if you're that person, you'd say, how come he got $2 million? I only got $1 million. Well, so the father was going to bless Esau and give him a double blessing. Well, their mother heard, Rebecca heard, and so she went to Jacob and she said, Jacob, she says, your father is about to give a special blessing to Esau. So she says, you need to do this. Now, remember, who's in control? God. Is God in control of everything?
No.
Can God do what he does? Do we have to do wrong to help God? No, but they thought that God wasn't in control. So here's what Rebecca said. She said, go get some of your brother's clothes. And she says, I'm going to take just one of the lambs from our flock. And she's like, I can make it so it'll taste like what Esau, he'll go hunt some wild animals. She's like, I'll make it taste just like Esau when he makes it. And she says, you're going to go in and you're going to pretend to be Esau. Now, remember we did that game earlier where you were trying to hear somebody's voice, and a lot of you, if you knew the person, you could tell their voice. Well, Jacob said to his mom, he says, I'm not like Esau. She's like, I'm not going to fool Dad. And so she put Esau's clothes on him, and then when she killed the animal, she took some of the animal's skins, and she tied it to his arms, because Esau had really, really hairy arms. Like he was hairy like a sheep or something. Okay, so I'll go to the next one here, Trina. So what happened so Jacob went, and he changed into Esau's clothes. Oh, what is it?
Jesus can change me.
All right, you are all listening back there. All right, so Jacob comes to his father, and she makes him this food, and so he comes in, he says, Father, it's Esau, because Jacob didn't sound like Esau did. He said, it's Esau, and his dad said, who are you? He says, I'm Esau. You know, he was trying to pretend like he was Esau. He was trying to pretend like he was somebody that he wasn't, because he was trying to steal his brother's blessing. And his father said, how'd you get that animal so fast? He's like, you should still be out hunting. He said, well, God blessed me. That's why I got back here. So he's lying now to his dad, all these things he shouldn't do. And his dad said, come here closer. And so when he got closer, he smelled the clothes. And it smelled like Esau. I guess Esau had bad B.O. or he wore Axe or something. So he smelled the clothes. He said, okay, you smell like Esau. And then he ate the food. And then when he got done eating, he said he just wanted to check. He said, who are you? He says, are you my son Esau? He said, yes, I'm your son Esau. Now, was he Esau?
No.
But he's pretending to be Esau because he thinks that God's not in control. He thinks he's got to help God. He's got to do it his way instead of God's way. And what do we call it when we do things our way instead of God's way? Does somebody know what that's called? What do we call that? Yes, sir. What do we call that? No, God is sovereign, but when we try to do things our way instead of God's way, what would we call that? Yes, sir.
God can change us.
No, well, that's our upward, but what do we call it when we do things our way and we do what we want instead of what God wants? What do we call it? Selfish, or we could call it sin. When we choose our way instead of choosing God's way, that's sin. Well, his father said, okay, he said, I'm going to bless you. And so he gave him Esau's blessing. Now, go to the next slide. Do you know what happened? As soon as Isaac left, guess who came back?
Esau.
And Esau walks in and he says, Father, he says, I have your food for you. I'm ready to be blessed. And his dad says, who are you? He says, I'm Esau. And his father's like, uh-oh. He said, who was the person who came before you? Because he says, I just gave that blessing to him. And then Esau lifted up his voice and he cried. He says, my brother, it's my brother Jacob. He's like, that's why his name's Jacob. He's a trickster. He's dishonest. He said he tricked me out of my birthright for a bowl of chili. He said, give me your birthright. And he says, now he's stolen the blessing from me. So Esau was upset. And so his father blessed Esau, but now his father had already given him God's blessing that he would be the greater nation of the two sons. Well, Esau was upset, and he wasn't going to let it go. He thought to himself, he says, well, my father's old. He says, he can barely see, and he'll probably die soon. And he says, so as soon as my father dies, he says, I'm going to take care of Jacob. He thought, he was like, I'm going to kill him and take back my blessing. Well, their parents, go to the next one, Trina. Their parents are, now, what do we say? Who's in control of everything?
God.
God. And what do we call that? He's what? He's sovereign. That means he's in control of everything. So, Jacob made a big mess, and his mom made a big mess because they tried to do things their way instead of God's way. So now, go to the next slide, Trina. Now, Jacob has to run away. In fact, his mom went to his father, and she said, you need to tell Jacob to go away to my father and to his house because it was far away. And she says, you need to have him leave, otherwise Esau is going to try to kill him. So now Jacob has to leave. And so as he's leaving, doesn't have much stuff with him, he lays down for the night and he goes to sleep. And all he had for a pillow was some rocks. He puts his head down. And while he was sleeping, he had a dream. He dreamed that there was this stairway, this